The Concorde spire looked less like a station and more like a verdict, an impossible needle of alloy and light hanging over Caro's, a dying red star. Its hull drank the rust glow and gave none back. Commander Elias Ward watched it swell in the shuttle's forward glass as their approach corridor snapped them onto guidance rails. The pilot, a young lieutenant with steady hands and a tight jaw, breathed like he'd forgotten the trick. "You've been here?" Ward asked. "No, sir. Only in briefings." "Briefings always make it smaller," Ward said. "Try not to stare. They like that." Docking clamps seized the shuttle with a metallic sigh. The airlock cycled, releasing a sterile scent, antiseptic and ozone. The reception bay gleamed, mirror floors, white lights, no art, no warmth. A delegation waited at the threshold, 6 Concorde officials in ceremonial armor. Different species, same posture, shoulders squared, eyes trained for contempt. Between them floated a translator drone. "Commander Elias Ward," the drone intoned. "Representative of the United Human Defense Fleet. You are late by 4 minutes and 18 seconds. Ward checked his wrist display. "Your clock runs fast." A thin official with translucent skin leaned forward. "Time does not bend for excuses, human." Ward's mouth curved. "Neither do I." They moved through corridors lined with Concorde insignia, spirals and razor-straight lines. Cameras tracked them. Armed sentries stood at measured intervals, weapons angled like punctuation. The lieutenant stayed half a step behind Ward. Ward heard the shallow breathing and didn't comment. Fear was fine. It just didn't get to drive. An elevator carried them upward behind a transparent wall. Decks stacked like ribs around a hollow spine. Far below, Caro's burned like a coal. The drone hovered beside Ward. "Your presence has been requested by High Executor Threxel Vaughan. Compliance is expected." "Requested," Ward repeated. "It is not politeness. It is protocol." Ward nodded. "Protocol's just manners with a gun." The doors opened onto the Hall of Accord, a chamber vast enough to make a human feel like a punctuation mark. Tiered platforms rose in rings, packed with representatives. Hundreds, wrapped in regalia that ranged from elegant to monstrous. Above them, dark glass showed the stars. At the center waited a circular dais of black stone. Ward stepped onto it alone. A guard halted the lieutenant at the edge, weapon humming faintly. A low resonance rolled through the hall, half chant, half machine. The drone translated, "Proceeding, Human Accord Review. Charge, non-compliance." Ward stood at ease, hands clasped behind his back, and let his gaze travel across the assembly. Some stared with curiosity, some with hunger. A few looked away first, unsettled by the lack of performance. A door opened high on the far platform. High Executor Threxel Vaughan entered with measured steps, flanked by 2 enforcers. He was tall even by Concorde standards, armored in layered plates etched with pulsing symbols. His eyes sat deep beneath a brow ridge like a blade. He stopped above the dais and let silence harden. "Human," Vaughan said, voice translated into smooth contempt. "You have trespassed across Concorde-protected regions, armed your frontier, and rejected lawful integration." Ward looked up. "We settled empty systems. We defended ourselves. We declined a contract written at gunpoint." A ripple moved through the tiers. Vaughan raised a clawed hand and it died. "Your species carries a reputation for rashness. We will correct that." A display ignited behind him, human colony worlds, orbital stations, freight routes highlighted like veins. Then another overlay, Concorde fleets at the borders, clean lines of firepower. "The Concorde offers mercy," Vaughan said. "Surrender military autonomy. Submit to Concorde governance. Disarm your colonies. In return, you will be permitted to exist within assigned sectors." Ward tilted his head. "Assigned. You will comply," Vaughan continued, "or you will be erased. Not conquered. Removed. So the galaxy remembers that defiance has a price. Fear, packaged as law." Ward breathed in sterile air and tasted old power. Ward remembered Earth's oceans from the archives, storms the size of continents, waves that ate ships, lightning that turned night into noon. Humans had learned early that nature didn't negotiate and survival didn't care about dignity. You adapted, you endured, you joked so your hands wouldn't shake. The Concorde thought fear was a leash. Ward knew fear was just weather. And sometimes, when weather got ugly, you built a bigger roof. He looked at the projected colony images, at the tiny lights representing people who'd grown food under artificial suns and welded hulls in vacuum. Then he looked back at Vaughn. "High Executor," Ward said, voice calm enough to offend, "you built this place to make people feel small." Vaughn's eyes narrowed. "It succeeds." "It does," Ward agreed. "On people who think size decides outcomes." A murmur. Vaughn's enforcers shifted, just enough to show they were listening with muscle. Ward continued. "You call your threat mercy. You think terror is a language everyone speaks." "It is," Vaughn said. Ward's smile sharpened. "No. It's the only language you've needed." Vaughn's gaze bored into him. "Answer the ultimatum." Ward flexed his fingers once behind his back. He chose his words the way he chose targets, clean and final. "Here is my answer," he said. "Humans don't give AF*CK about fear." For a heartbeat, even the translator drone stuttered, then rendered the phrase without softening it. The Hall of Accord went silent, not ceremony, but shock. Vaughn's jaw tightened. "You mistake bravado for strength." Ward didn't blink. "No, High Executor. I'm telling you what your briefings missed." "And what is that?" Ward let the pause bite. "When humans are cornered," he said softly, "we stop asking permission from the universe." He turned his head slightly, addressing the tears. "You want compliance. You want an example. You want the galaxy to remember." Ward looked back to Vaughn. "So do we." An enforcer stepped forward, weapon rising. A distant voice called a code. The drone's lights flashed warning. Ward didn't move. He simply waited, steady as gravity, and let the Concorde decide what came next. The shuttle detached from the Concorde spire without ceremony. No escort followed, no shots fired. That restraint unsettled Ward more than open hostility would have. Empires that relied on fear preferred theater. Silence meant deliberation. The pilot exhaled only once the spire shrank behind them. "They let us go." "They wanted us to," Ward said. He keyed a secure channel. "Patch Fleet Command." The hologram stabilized to reveal Admiral Nyasha Okoye, her face calm, eyes sharp. "You're out." "For now," Ward replied. "They're deciding how to make an example." Okoye nodded once. "We're seeing Concorde fleet repositioning along 3 vectors. No declarations." Ward's mouth twitched. "Of course not. They'll stage something tidy. Bloodless, if possible. They think precision equals control." "Your read." "They don't understand escalation," Ward said. "They think it's a ladder. Humans know it's a slope." The channel closed. The shuttle slipped into transit, stars stretching to threads. Ward leaned back, letting the hum settle. He didn't replay the hall. He replayed the briefings the Concorde had never asked for. High Executor Threxel Vaughn stood in the spire's war chamber, surrounded by projections. He listened as analysts spoke in careful tones. "Human military doctrine is reactive," said one, a thin being with mirrored eyes. "They posture. They argue. They fracture." Vaughn watched the models of human colonies pulse. "They adapt," he corrected. "But they are disorganized." Another voice chimed in. "Their biology encourages risk. We should discourage it." Vaughn considered the image of Ward, still unafraid. "We will demonstrate consequence," he decided. "A strike that cannot be misread." "Targets." "An uninhabited asset," Vaughn said. "A moon. Industrial value only. No casualties. The message will be clean." Clean. Vaughn approved the order. On the edge of human space, the moon Kestrel 9 turned in slow, indifferent arcs. Automated refineries traced scars across its surface, pulling metals from old rock. No domes. No lives. Concorde fire arrived as light. Orbital lances cut the vacuum with surgical clarity, drilling down until the crust failed. The moon's surface blossomed, then fractured. Shockwaves raced, debris arcing like a broken crown. Sensors across human space screamed, then fell quiet as Kestrel 9 split and bled itself into orbit. The Concorde broadcast the footage across open channels. No speech. No threat. Just proof. Ward watched the feed in Fleet Command's darkened theater. No one spoke. The destruction was precise, almost elegant. Okoye broke the silence. They chose the moon. Ward nodded. They wanted applause. Civilian pressure will spike, said a strategist. We should respond publicly. Ward shook his head. Not yet. Eyes turned to him. They expect outrage, he said. They expect us to argue terms. They expect fear to do the work. And if we don't? Okoye asked. Ward leaned forward. Then we make them wait. Silence settled again, this time deliberate. Orders flowed, quiet, methodical. Fleets shifted without banners. Logistics tightened. Civilian channels were steadied with facts, not promises. No speeches. No flags. Just preparation. Days passed. The Concorde mistook quiet for paralysis. In the spire, confidence returned. Vaughan reviewed reports with satisfaction. Human communications show restraint. They are processing loss, an aide offered. They are learning, Vaughan said. We will escalate incrementally. A junior analyst hesitated. High executor, human history suggests. Vaughan cut him off. History is a luxury of victors. Ward stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching space fold back into stars. Captain Lin waited beside him. Targets confirmed, Lin said. All non-civilian. Ward nodded. Good. We're not here to teach them to hate us. Just to listen. Ward met her gaze. To hear clearly. The Resolute and her sisters slid into Concorde-controlled space without announcement. Their drives whispered, tuned to signatures Concorde sensors had catalogued as civilian. Old assumptions had weight. Humans used that. First came the relays, communications hubs that stitched Concorde enforcement together. Human drones ghosted in, latched, and went dark. Data died in clean lines. Then the logistics nodes. Fuel depots vented into nothing. Supply ships found themselves stranded, alive and powerless. No planets burned. No cities screamed. The Concorde's order dissolved into confusion. Vaughan stared at the war chamber as reports stacked and contradicted. Where is the declaration? There is none, said the mirrored-eyed analyst, voice tight. Human fleets are selective. Vaughan slammed a claw into the console. They are cowards. They avoid battle. They avoid spectacle, the analyst corrected. Our enforcement wings cannot coordinate. Restore the relays. They're gone. A message cut through, flagged as high priority. Human encryption cracked open with a familiar cadence. Ward appeared, framed by the bridge's dim light. He looked almost bored. High Executor, Ward said. You wanted a lesson. Vaughan bristled. You struck Concorde assets. You will answer. Ward nodded. We did. And we will. Cease these attacks and submit, Vaughan demanded. Or we will escalate. Ward's eyes flicked to a display off-screen, then back. You already did. You destroyed nothing of value, Vaughan sneered. Ward smiled, thin and precise. You're wrong. We destroyed your confidence. Vaughan's silence stretched. We don't need your worlds, Ward continued. We don't need your people. We don't need your symbols. We need you to stop mistaking restraint for weakness. You cannot win, Vaughan said. Ward's voice softened. We don't need to. The channel closed. Across Concorde space, enforcement fleets drifted, weapons hot and orders cold. Crews argued over channels that no longer answered. Authority frayed. On human worlds, people watched the news and went back to work. The message wasn't fear. It was competence. Ward stood alone on the bridge after the final reports came in. Lynn approached quietly. "They're pulling back." "They're thinking," Ward said. "That's new." "What now?" Ward looked at the starfield, at the places where lines of power had been assumed eternal. "Now they decide whether they want a war they can't control. And if they choose wrong?" Ward's answer was steady. "Then we finish the conversation." Far away, the Concorde learned what humans did when left to calculate. The Concorde did not retreat. It rebranded confusion as resolve and called it unity. High Executive Threxel Vaughn stood before a fractured command net and chose pride over prudence. He authorized a mobilization order so broad it strangled itself. Fleets surged, then stalled. Governors argued jurisdiction. Enforcement wings demanded clarity that no longer existed. The Concorde had built a machine that worked only when fear moved in straight lines. Humans had bent the lines. Vaughn summoned the council, voice sharpened to command. "They strike our sinews and call it mercy. We will answer with presence." "Presence requires coordination," an aide said carefully. "Then restore it," Vaughn snapped. "We cannot. They are inside our assumptions." Vaughn turned away. "Then we show them the cost of insolence." Ward watched Concorde traffic light up like a fever on the Resolute's tactical wall. It was beautiful in a way, order trying to reassert itself by sheer momentum. "They're clumping," Captain Lynn said. "Defensive knots around prestige assets." Ward nodded. "Symbols over substance. That's consistent." A comm officer cleared her throat. "Intercepts show chatter escalating. They're arguing command precedence." Ward exhaled. "Good. They're busy fighting ghosts." "Orders?" Lynn asked. Ward tapped the display and brought up a lattice of targets, shipyards, training academies, enforcement arsenals. All outside civilian corridors. All replaceable, eventually. "Not today." "Phased pressure," Ward said. "No declarations. No speeches. Precision only." Lynn hesitated. "They'll call it war." "They already have," Ward replied. "We're just refusing their script." The first strike wasn't loud. It was absence. At the Soren Shipworks, a Concorde yard known for ritual launches and immaculate symmetry, docked hulls went dead. Power drained. Cranes froze mid-lift. Gravity stuttered, then normalized without explanation. Workers floated, cursed, steadied themselves, and waited for orders that never came. Human infiltrators left no signature, no explosions, no warnings. Just locked doors and inert metal. Next came the academies. Simulation cores blinked out across 3 systems. Cadets stared at blank panes where futures had been promised. Instructors demanded answers from consoles that offered none. Enforcement arsenals followed. Ammunition feeds jammed with perfect uniformity. Weapons powered on and refused to fire. Diagnostics swore nothing was wrong. Across Concorde space, capability evaporated without blood. Vaughn received the reports in fragments. "This is sabotage," he snarled. "It is targeted," the analyst said. "They avoid populations." "Cowardice," Vaughn said, but the word sounded thin even to him. A message cut through the chaos, human encryption again, patient and unadorned. Ward appeared, the bridge lights dim behind him. "High Executor." Vaughn's voice sharpened. "You violate Concorde sovereignty." Ward inclined his head. "We're adjusting your enforcement posture." "You will stop." Ward's eyes were steady. "We will continue until you do." "You risk total war." Ward paused, then spoke with deliberate care. "We're managing risk. You're multiplying it." Vaughn's jaw tightened. "You think restraint makes you superior?" "No," Ward said. "We think control does." The channel closed. On the Resolute, alarms chimed, not threats, confirmations. Lynn smiled without humor. Phase 1 complete. Ward looked at the map. "Proceed." Phase 2 arrived as motion. Human fleets emerged at nodes the Concorde had catalogued as improbable. Drives flared and died as ships settled into firing lanes with unseemly confidence. Concorde sensors screamed too late. This time there was fire, but it was contained. Human weapons cut clean arcs through hull plating, venting ships without chain reactions. Crews escaped. Vessels drifted, wounded and alive. The message was unmistakable: we can end you, we choose not to. In the Hall of Accord, representatives shouted over one another. Fear finally arrived, uninvited and unmannered. "They're dismantling us," one cried. "They refuse negotiation," said another. "They refuse intimidation," a third corrected. Vaughan stood amid the noise and felt something he had not named in decades. Uncertainty. Not about outcome, but about meaning. An aide leaned close. "High Executor, we can still escalate. Planetary pressure." "No," Vaughan said. The word surprised them both. He remembered Ward's eyes, unlit by spectacle. He remembered the moon Kestrel 9 breaking in silence. The humans had answered without rage, without flourish. They had answered like engineers fixing a fault. Vaughan straightened. "Open a channel." Ward received the hail on the bridge. He did not smile. Vaughan appeared, armor dulled by exhaustion. "Commander Ward." "High Executor," Ward replied. "You've lost initiative." Vaughan bristled, then forced composure. "You seek leverage." "We already have it," Ward said. "You will not occupy Concorde space," Vaughan said. "You will not rule us." Ward nodded. "Agreed." Vaughan faltered. "Then what do you want?" Ward leaned forward. "Autonomy. Borders respected. No ultimatums. No demonstrations." "And if we refuse?" Ward's voice was quiet. "Then we remove your ability to refuse." Vaughan searched Ward's face for hatred and found none. That frightened him more than threats ever had. "You leave us no dignity," Vaughan said. Ward considered that. "Dignity isn't something we can take. Only something you keep." Silence stretched. The hall waited on the other end, a galaxy holding its breath. Vaughan spoke at last. "We will convene." Ward nodded. "Do it quickly." The channel closed. Hours passed. Concorde fleets drifted, inert. Human ships held position without posturing. The universe felt suspended, as if gravity itself had paused to listen. Lynn broke the quiet. "If they don't agree." Ward watched the stars. "Then we continue to be boring." She laughed once, sharp and brief. "That'll terrify them." "It already has," Ward said. A signal arrived, formal, restrained, unmistakably different. "Ceasefire discussions. Immediate." Ward closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. "Stand down to observation. Keep everything warm." "Yes, sir." As orders flowed, Ward allowed himself a single thought. Not triumph, not relief, but confirmation. The Concorde had finally learned the difference between fear and control. And they were very late to class. The Concorde spire felt smaller the second time. Commander Elias Ward noticed it the moment his shuttle docked. Nothing physical had changed, but the weight was gone. The corridors still gleamed, the sentries still stood, yet the place no longer pressed down on him. Power that depended on fear always shrank once exposed. This time, Ward was not alone. A small human delegation followed him, unarmed, unceremonious. No flags. No music. The message had already been delivered elsewhere. They entered the Hall of Accord to a restrained hush. The tiers were thinner now. Several representatives were absent, detained by crises that had bloomed across Concorde space when enforcement collapsed. The galaxy was busy recalibrating. High Executor Threxel Vaughan waited at the central platform. His armor remained immaculate, but the posture had changed. He stood straighter, not from pride, but from effort. Ward stepped onto the dais and stopped. He did not look up immediately. Vaughan broke the silence. "You asked for speed." Ward raised his eyes. "I asked for clarity." Vaughan gestured, and a projection flared to life. Treaties, borders, protocols rewritten in crisp layers. The Concord will recognize human sovereign autonomy across all settled systems. No oversight. No forced integration. A ripple moved through the hall. Ward did not react. Vaughan continued. Enforcement fleets will withdraw to established zones. Trade routes remain open. Disputes resolved by arbitration, not threat. Ward waited. There will be reparations, Vaughan said, the word heavy. For Kestrel 9. Ward inclined his head. Acceptable. Vaughan's eyes narrowed slightly. You do not demand more. We didn't come to collect trophies, Ward said. We came to end a behavior. Vaughan held his gaze. You humiliated us. Ward's voice stayed level. You tried to break us. Silence stretched. The galaxy leaned in. Vaughan exhaled slowly. What you did, dismantled assumptions we believed immutable. Ward shrugged. Assumptions age poorly. A Concord elder shifted forward. What prevents you from doing this again? When it suits you. Ward answered without hesitation. The same thing that always has, cost. Yours or ours? The elder pressed. Both, Ward said. That's the point. The elder leaned back, unsettled. Vaughan studied Ward as if seeing him clearly for the first time. You could have conquered. You chose restraint. Ward met his gaze. Conquest breeds resistance. We prefer stability. Through fear, Vaughan said. Ward shook his head. Through predictability. The word landed harder than any threat. Vaughan turned to the assembly. The Concord accepts the terms. The hall did not cheer. It absorbed the statement like a wound closing. Hours later, Ward stood alone at the observation window, watching the red star Caro smolder beyond the glass. The spire orbited it with mechanical devotion, unchanged, unaware. Admiral Okoye's voice came through his earpiece. It's done. For now, Ward replied. You realize what you've done, she said. Ward watched plasma storms crawl across the star's surface. We showed them what we are. And what is that? Ward considered the question. Persistent. Okoye laughed softly. That's one word for it. The channel closed. Footsteps approached. Captain Lin stopped beside him. They're clearing our exit corridor. Ward nodded. Good. She hesitated. You didn't enjoy this. Ward glanced at her. No. But you'd do it again. Yes. Lin studied him. Because they would have kept pushing. Ward returned his gaze to the star. Because bullies don't stop at apologies. They stop at boundaries. They stood in silence, watching the spire drift. Across Concord space, the consequences unfolded without spectacle. Enforcement fleets returned to port under new mandates. Governors learned to negotiate without invoking annihilation. Smaller species noticed something subtle but profound. The Concord no longer spoke in absolutes. Human colonies resumed their rhythms. Crops grew under artificial suns. Ships launched without ceremony. Life continued, unimpressed by history. On a frontier world, a child asked her father why the sky was quieter lately. He thought for a moment. Because someone fixed a problem. High Executor Threxel Vaughan remained in his office long after the hall emptied. The armor lay on its stand. Without it, he looked older. An aide hovered at the door. You did what was necessary. Vaughan did not answer immediately. He stared at a paused image from the confrontation. Ward's face, calm, unadorned. They were not angry, Vaughan said at last. No, the aide agreed. They were not afraid. No. Vaughan nodded slowly. That is what frightened me. The Resolute slipped free of the spire and into open space. Stars unfolded, indifferent and vast. Ward took the captain's chair and let the ship settle around him. He felt no triumph. Only alignment. Lin glanced over. What happens when the galaxy forgets this lesson? Ward's fingers rested lightly on the armrest. They won't forget. Why not? Because we didn't make ourselves a legend, Ward said. We made ourselves a constant. The Resolute turned toward human space, engines warming with quiet confidence. Behind them, the Concorde spire continued its orbit, unchanged in form, diminished in meaning. The galaxy moved on, war avoided, order rewritten, fear replaced by something far more durable. Understanding.